Hello, welcome back. Today I have a special surprise for you. It's an absolute pleasure to introduce you to one of America's leading artists, a man that I have admired for many, many years. I'm proud to present to you today Mr. Ben Stahl. Born in Chicago, he began his art career at age 16, exhibiting his works at the Chicago Art Institute, and since then has received over 50 national awards for his works, including the coveted Saltus Gold Medal from the National Academy. His works have been displayed in numerous periodicals, such as the Saturday Evening Post, American Artist, Cosmopolitan, Esquire, and many, many others. Ben has taught painting at the Chicago Art Institute and the American Academy of Art and has lectured across the country at many schools and colleges. He was a founder of the famous Artist School in Westport, Connecticut, as well as a noted writer. One of his children's books, Blackbeard's Ghost, was made into a film by Walt Disney. Ben is also the host of the television art series, Journey into Art with Ben Stahl, a 26-part series designed to teach the viewer several different painting styles. Said Norman Rockwell of Ben Stahl, "We are but illustrators. Ben Stahl is among the masters." So without taking up any more time, I'd like to welcome you to the joy of painting, and thank you for being with us today, Ben.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. It was a very nice introduction. I want to get right into this painting I'm going to do of a girl's head. I don't use models, so what I do is I make drawings. I make a lot of drawings beforehand, and here are an example of some of the drawings which will be turned from drawings into paintings on this canvas. I try to get all the bugs out of and the problems out of it by doing this first. And I've decided on using perhaps this little drawing up here to be the head that I intend to use. Next, could I talk about color on the palette? In the world, we have earth, and we have sky. So I use umbers and siennas, raw siennas, and the reds as earth colors, and the green, of course, is earth, but the blue part is sky. Then everything in nature is hot or cold, and various degrees in between, but basically everything is hot or cold. Now I start out with a cold, raw, burnt umber, cold. A raw umber is warm, burnt sienna is cold, raw sienna is warm, and then a lemon yellow, which is cool, but I mix lemon yellow with the red here, and I get a beautiful cadmium yellow, which takes care of the warm yellow. Then, of course, the vermilion, the warm red, and then alizarin crimson cold, and then cerulean blue, which is actually warm. There's a lot of warmth in cerulean blue. There's a lot of sunlight and air and atmosphere in cerulean blue, and it seems to be in just about every place throughout the earth, world. Then the cold one is outer space, you might call it, and that's the cobalt. It's very deep, strong. I have a green here. It's called Maximum Green 8, which mixed with any of the colors provides a magnificent array of greens, better than any kind of green I've ever seen or used. That's my palette. Now, I do use other colors occasionally. Flesh tint, that's a funny use. I use it for everything except flesh, but it's a beautiful color. And I also use Naples yellow. But for this palette, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. So now I'll start painting, and wish me luck. Here it goes. I have toned the canvas. I always tone a canvas first. It kills the awful strong white of the canvas. Things look better painting against a tone than painting against white, pure white. Now this is black. I did mention I use black here. Black, Renoir called the queen of all colors. And Monet said he never used black. When they asked how come he gets such beautiful colors, he said, I never use black. So that's the way it goes in painting. But I mentioned earlier that I do not use models, but that is based on many years of using models and drawing from a model and studying very hard, practicing drawing very hard. And it isn't surprising at all that men like Degas, Rubens, and the great masters of the past, Raphael, all the rest, Michelangelo, they drew from imagination. And it seems to me that drawing these days is almost a lost art. People aren't drawing like they used to, and especially the people who are just starting out. Drawing can be more fun than painting, and you can do things with a drawing that you can't do with painting. You get the essence of the thing, simple, fast, quick. And I recommend that anybody taking up painting for the first time should start out doing a lot of drawings. Now here's the thing in this painting, you can see how I smear in the lips. You don't have to draw outline lips, outline eyes, outline the face, heads, and different things, but do a general overall, I call it just a smear, like I'm starting out this business of the hat. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. In fact, Degas once mentioned, he said that an artist does his best work when he doesn't know what he's doing. And the reason for that is that art is largely instinctive. It's instinct based on training and practice. It's the way a pianist hits the right keys on the piano. Instinct, but it's based on study. And Raphael once said about drawing, he said, when one doesn't think, when one is drawing, it works out better that way. Now those are two of the very, very great draftsmen. I have used spray glaze on the background of this painting and killed all of the whites, the lights that are strong, because they're too harsh. It's better to work into a toned color. A good way to do is spray with fixed stiff, or rather spray the canvas with, well in this case I use spray glaze, but you can also mix retouch, paint, the stuff they used in lighter fluid. Use lighter fluid instead of turpentine, and it dries very rapidly. Or tone your canvas with a mixture of turpentine and paint, and then work into it. Now you notice how I try to establish the big effect of the thing first. You don't start with a detail. You start with a big effect. Then you can carry this. If I wanted to, I could spend another week on this painting and go all into detail that would explain everything in detail, but I like to do things as suggest things. Now I'm just sort of suggesting and strengthening under that chin. I feel the main job of an artist is to find the things in nature that the average person cannot see, then put them on canvas, but doing a better job of art than nature. Why? Because nature is everything except an artist. Only a human can appreciate art, and only a human can create art. The trouble is, too many artists merely copy nature's work instead of creating art based on nature, based on nature's rules. And if you study nature, not only just what it is, what it looks like, but why it looks that way. And then you paint exactly in the same manner. Another point I'd like to make is it's on watching demonstrations such as this. If you want to improve, don't just sit back and watch a demonstration in the same way you watch a magician perform. Try to analyze why and how he did it. You yourself must become your own best teacher and avoid, like the plague, a painter's methods and results which are closer to Houdini than they are to Rembrandt. In other words, avoid trickery. Do it the hard way. Do it the traditional way, the way painters have been painting for centuries. Now, as I'm painting, I'm doing all this instinctively. I feel a need for something, and then I fulfill it with a stroke of the brush or a smear of color. And for heaven's sake, don't paint pretty. That can be the death knell for any work of art. Prettiness. Sugar-coated pictures. Develop taste. And you develop taste only by going to the museums and studying the masters, taking a look at masters' work. Here I'm using spray glaze, and it puts a tint of color into the wet paint. Artists have been, you see that yellow, the glaze of yellow shooting all into that thing? This is an oil-based paint itself. You can use it with watercolor or any color. Pastel works equally well. And artists have been using glazes for years. That's how the old masters got luminosity into the things. But this spray glaze but they had to glaze into dry paint. The canvas had to be dry for about 2 or 3 weeks. But with spray glaze, you can glaze and spray right into wet paint, and colors will happen that are just fantastic. It's generally wise to paint with hot colors below and cool colors on top. For instance, a tree, the green out of a tree is living, it's warm. The human body is warm, and the colors you put into it are warm underneath. And the colors that nature puts into a living thing are warm underneath. On top is sky color. That's the coolness. So as you paint warm, especially in the case of flesh, paint warm flesh, and then paint your cool colors on top of that. This is why it's so important to lay out your palette with warm and cold colors. Take a look at Rembrandt, the way he used combinations of cold and warm. It's very effective. The object of painting is to make a picture look good, and you should study and take advantage of all the things that make it look good, but without making it look tricky. For instance, also, I might say you learn to paint by painting, and you learn to draw, which is almost a lost art these days, by drawing. But you only learn how to understand what art is all about is by studying great art and looking at nature, not so much what she is or what she looks like, but how she works. This is the aspect of nature an artist must imitate, most of all. And don't be conned into believing a painting is good because it has marvelous detail or is slick, clever and flamboyantly rendered. Remember, a whisper can be more potent than a shout, and that, like nature, good art tells no story, or at least merely uses story as a means, not an end. Now I'm beginning to fill in. I've got the head established, but I'm working in some interesting stuff into the background. And you can use any kind of color in anything. Nature uses color on everything. Don't think of, say, an orange is orange. It has to be orange. You can paint a purple orange. Underlying all things, it's form that's the most important thing, far more important than color. A great painting by Renoir in black and white is just as great in black and white as it is in color. It goes for any of them. Be creative. Try to create new forms. Make everything you paint your own. Not nature's, not somebody else's. Make it your own. If you paint leaves on a tree, make them your own leaves. Make them the kind of leaves that nobody ever saw before, but yet everybody will know they're leaves. This is the real interest in learning to paint and in art. Makes art art. Line is very important. Line in relationship to tone, flat areas of tone. And this is why I'm putting in this line. It creates more interest. In an orchestra, tone would be the trumpets and the tubas and that sort of thing, but line would be the flutes and strings. And if you listen to great music, you'll see the way composers have used line, strings, and flutes, the strings woven through the tonality and the deep flat areas. And an artist must do the same. And you can learn a lot about painting by studying music. And a lot of musicians can learn a lot about music by studying great painting. You notice how these little flicks of color I hit in there like they're just dancing like fireflies in the night. And use a palette knife, as you see here, in your fingernails, in your fingers. But a palette knife is very good. It's also fine for scraping out areas, and sometimes you'll scrape out the area and it will look a lot better after you've scraped it out. And scumble and vary your brush strokes. Don't make two brush strokes alike on a canvas. Keep twisting that brush in your fingers like I'm doing now. Make it work for you. And constantly be all excited about what you're doing. At the start, you're going to have a lot of trouble. You're going to have more failures than good ones. But it's the only way. If you want to play on a miniature golf course all your life and paint ordinary paintings, okay. But that's not for you. You want to get on that big 18-hole golf course and do a big job, a real thing. And use paint. Pile paint on in one area and work it thin in other areas. There it is, variations. Don't do anything the same way twice. Now you see I'm using my fingernail to soften something. If you look at great paintings, and especially in the Impressionists, you'll see their fingerprints all over the thing. Or they'll take a piece of rag and slap it against the painting and pull it away. Well, it's almost finished. Still working with it. There's getting a little more form. Now, a good idea, for instance, a painting such as this, I might leave it as it is, get a frame and say it's finished, but sometimes I'd come back to it and carry it further. But you must get the big masses. This lesson that I've done today in this case is a good example of how to lay in the painting. And art, the more you get into it, it gets more difficult and gets tougher all the time. And as Degas said one time, he says, if it wasn't so difficult, if it were not so difficult, it wouldn't be fun. So go at it the difficult way and have fun. Notice how scratchy to the canvas. Texture. I didn't even start talking about texture, but that's very important. Look at the textures in nature. And line can be white and light lines as well as dark lines, such as there. I'm smoothing out that hair. It was a little rough. Should be darker. But learn how to do things economically. Don't make a big fuss over things. If you can do it in one stroke, do it in one stroke. That's a little repair work. Softening an edge with my finger. And notice I used very little paint on the face itself. But the best thing I can say is draw, draw, draw. Well, I just see my time is about up. I could spend another week on this, but this is sort of, at least it shows you how to lay in the painting anyway. And as you can see, I've thrown color around with abandon and form, but the important thing is to see that I got a relationship of tone to line. In a painting, you work tone to line, and suddenly things begin to happen that are interesting, because that's really a basic form of painting, is that line and tone combination along with values and all the rest. But so many students seem to forget. They paint too much just pure in tone, which is flat tone, and not enough of these lines to delineate form. So we'll just sort of, this thing would go. I can't think of anything more to say on the subject or paint on the subject, but this is it. Thank you for watching.
Now, didn't I tell you this man was fantastic? This is truly why they call Ben Stahl one of the masters. And from all of us here at The Joy of Painting, I'd like to wish you happy painting, God bless, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.